Hey everybody, and welcome back to my top 50 board games of all time. Let's continue with number 40 to number 31. So at number 40 I have Lancaster by Matthias Kramer. Now this was my last year's number 11, so it's quite a big fall for me this year. This is a game that I don't get to the table too often, but again I love nonetheless. It's an area control game, it's a worker placement game, and it's also a set collection game where you have your own kind of force of knights and you are deploying them onto the board to get different nobles to get to your table, and different benefits and stuff like that. But the cool thing about this game is that when a player places one of their knights on the board, you can use a stronger knight to kick them off that spot. So there is this more injected element of player interaction in the game that you get with a lot of worker placement games. It's not like you can just secure a place willy-nilly, so I really do like that. There is also some very cool mechanisms that are used in the game, such as being able to change the laws throughout. So as you accumulate more of these nobles onto your individual player boards, you get different voting influence cubes, and when every round there's a phase where you vote on new laws to come in and out of power, and they can be such things as get X amount of points if you have all your level 2 knights deployed, or whoever's got the most people committed to battles is going to get amount of points. And obviously that's going to suit some players more than it is other players. So some people are going to be using their voting cubes to pass those laws through. Some of it are going to be doing all they can to stop those laws coming into power, and so on. So it really does have some extra or something else or additional than your traditional worker placement games, and I always do love that. A really great design, and I think it's somewhat underrated. That is Lancaster. At number 39 I have Wits and Wagers, which is one of my absolutely favourite party games. This one is, I suppose it's one of your more traditional trivia style games, but these all have questions based on numbers, and you are trying to give your best guesstimate or your best estimate on what the answer to these questions will be. And they're pretty hard questions to know, such as like how tall was the tallest giraffe in history in feet, and you've got to write obviously a number-based answer. And once all these answers are in, you're going to flip them over and you're going to allocate them to different spots on this player mat, which is going to decide the odds on who gets or what the answer is going to be. So the more extremes of those answers are going to give you better odds than they are on the ones in the middle. And additionally, this game is so cool because you don't have to be good at trivia. You can bet your funds on other people being right. And that is just absolutely brilliant. It's a genius twist because, as I said, you can do really well on this game without getting a single answer right, and I really do like that. Of course, you do get additional points for being right, but you can really invest or completely blow your whole in takings in other people, and can get huge multipliers and really do take off. So it's a game that you're going to do really well on, or you're going to kind of completely bomb on, but so much fun, extremely accessible, and one to bring out for the family. That is Wits and Wagers. At number 38 I have a new game to the list. This one is Citrus. Now, talking about underrated games, I think this one is a great example of that. This is a tile placement game where you have all these different colours of these different kind of fruit orchards, I suppose, and you the way you're gaining these tiles is so interesting because you have this grid. I think it's like a 2x3x4 kind of grid, and you are kind of taking a row or column of those tiles, paying the equal amount of money for doing so. But as you take things, the board is going to be constantly, or that grid is going to be constantly changing, either to your advantage or not to your advantage. And then you are placing those tiles onto the board, adding to an existing colour, or adding a new thing from these thinkers, they're called. And you're trying to surround these thinkers to get the majority of them. But whenever you add a new kind of set of orchards, you are using one of your workers to do so, which can be extremely limiting because you can only have a certain amount on the board, and money is such a tight resource in this game, and in order to get money you need to remove one of your workers from the board to get money. And the more workers you have on the board, the fewer amount or the less money you're going to get into your kitty. So there's this real tension about how you're going to use your workers to full advantage, and it almost has this flow, or this cash flow that you need to be very wary of. Extremely tightly designed, and I love it. It's just really good. That is Citrus. At number 37, I have last year's number 35, so almost no difference for Merlin. This is my, obviously the first game by Stefan Feld on the list. To be completely open, there's quite a few more going forward. But this one is, I suppose, one of his more controversial games in terms of at least its reception. Some people really like it, a lot of people don't like it. And I think that's because the mitigation of the game isn't so apparent as a lot of the other designs, but I love this game nonetheless. It's basically a huge rondel. You are rolling dice, and you are choosing to use those dice or activate those dice in any order to move your player piece around the board to get different benefits. Additionally, there's this neutral player piece, Merlin, which you can use to go clockwise or anti-clockwise around that rondel, which can really create some really cool synergies and stuff. I would highly recommend getting the expansion for this one. I think it makes the game at least maybe 2 points higher than it would be without it. Yeah, it really does work well with the expansion, as you are trying to fight off these different invaders which are attacking your player board. You're trying to collect different shields. You can collect flags to mitigate your dice rolls, and so on. There's lots of different things you can do. There's also an additional side player board which works in kind of an area control method. And I really do think it works a lot better than people say it does. I've always personally enjoyed it. I think people I've played it with have enjoyed it. Again, probably a bit more randomness than your traditional Feld, but still equally as fun for me. That is Merlin. At number 36, I have another new entry with Power Grid. Now, ironically, this is not a new game. It's been around for quite a while now. This is a Friedman Freeze economic game where you are spending money to get these different power plants, and then you're going to be collecting resources in order to power those power plants. And as the game goes on, you're trying to power as many power plants as you can, which gives you more money. And whoever can power the most plants at the end of the game is going to be the winner. It's a great economic engine where money is so important. I love the way that the money flows. You need the power plants on the board, and you kind of paying money to build routes of your power plants because you need to physically have the plants on the board. You need to have the power stations in order to power them. You need the resources to power them, and the more kind of common resources that are the resources that are being used, the more expensive they're going to be. So this really is a game about markets. It's about cash flow. It's about just being as efficient as you can. And on top of that, you've got to be quite careful about the player orders as well, because whoever's doing the best in the game is going to have a disadvantage. So almost sneaking in second place throughout the game until the very end is quite important with this one. But a timeless design, and one that I want to play so much more going forward because it is just great. That is Power Grid. At number 35, another big fall here. This was last year's number 10 with Mombasa. This is an Alexander Pfister design. I suppose it's another area control game where you have a hand of cards, and you're going to be playing those cards in different columns and choosing to use them. But every time you use those columns, they're going to slide up into almost 3 different discard piles. And at the end of the round, you're going to pick up each of those discard piles that you want to add it back into your hand. And I love that mechanism in itself, because if you want to play powerful hands, you're going to get diluted going forward because they're going to go into different discard piles. And you're going to be using those different hands of cards to acquire new cards. You're going to be using them to expand your presence on the map of Africa. This has a very cool, almost like a stock investment mechanism in the game, where you invest in different companies based on their coverage on the board, and the higher you get up on these tracks by investing in them, you're going to get better multipliers. You're also trying to increase yourself on these gem tracks to get more and more points. You can increase your capacity on your board to play more cards each round. Just another brilliant game by Alexander Pfister. I mean, I really can't complain about this one at all. The only reason it's fallen a bit is because another game he brought out kind of trumped this one for me. But that's no slight on Mombasa. I still absolutely love it. A great design, and lots of different things you can focus on, loads of things to weigh up, a small element of worker placement, and yeah, it's just a complete package of a game, and I highly recommend it. That is Mombasa. At number 34, I have a new entry with, ironically, another Alexander Pfister game, but something quite a bit different. This is Isle of Skye. This is a medium light tile placement game where you are building your own kind of landscape of rivers and fields and castles and stuff. And the reason, or the way you're going to, you're trying to fulfill these different objectives in the game, which are hugely, there's a big variation in them from game to game, because I think the game comes with 16 different scoring options, and you only use 4 of them from each game. So there's loads of replayability there, and those things might be such as, get X amount of points for your largest river, or for every column of at least 3 tiles you have, or for every cow you have, get a certain amount of points. And that really does dictate the way that you accumulate the tiles, because this game, every round in the game, you're going to draw 3 tiles from an opaque bag, and you are going to have them behind your player screen. You're going to choose to get rid of one of them, and you're going to set prices on the other 2 by allocating coins to them. And that money you allocate to those tiles is so important, because that is what other players have to pay you in order to get those tiles from you. But if they don't choose to buy them, then you're going to have to pay that yourself. So if there's a tile you particularly want in order to score you lots of points, then you need to set a fair price to it. You've got to be careful that you're not paying too much for it, but you also don't want your opponents to get it for cheap. And I really do love that. It works so well. This game plays probably in about 45 minutes, and it is just a great game for that timestamp. And again, one that you can introduce to almost anybody, because the rules overhead is very low. It's got a small barrier to entry, is what I'm trying to say. And I love this game. It is fantastic. That is Isle of Skye. At number 33, another new entry. This is QE. QE is such a fun game. I suppose it's a party game, but an economic game at the same time, where you all represent these different nations, and you are bidding on these different industries, but you can bid whatever you want. So you could bid as little as 50, or you could bid 50 billion. And obviously you are trying to collect not only the same type of industry, you're trying to diversify, you are basically trying to collect different sets of things. But this game has a very cool twist, which is a bit like, well, very similar to High Society, which I mentioned on my last set of 10 games, where whoever spends the most money at the end of the game is going to automatically be disqualified. But the cool thing about this is that the market is completely driven by the players. So if you know that another player has bid a hell of a lot of money and you've spent nowhere near that, you know how much you've got to play with. But at the same time, there's going to be one player every round who is going to set the price, or at least the starting price of the business that's up for sale, and only they are going to know what other players have bid. So you have very limited knowledge, but you can use that knowledge to your advantage, and it is so much fun. Again, it plays in about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, and it is just such a great game for that timestamp. Constantly engaging. I mean, it is just brilliant, and I love it. That is QE. At number 32, last year's number 25, for my third Wolfgang Kramer game on the list. This is Mexica. This is an area control game where you are basically carving the game out, or the game map out yourself, because you can put rivers down, or lakes, or I suppose they're rivers, to divide the board up into different regions, and then those regions are going to score on majorities based on how many temples are in those regions. It's an action point allowance game, so every round, or on your turn, you get 6 points to spend on different things, and you can use that to either move your pawn around the board, you can use it to lay temples down. Obviously, the more powerful the temples, the more action points they're going to take. You can spend all your points to teleport from one side of the board to the other. You can lay those rivers down, as I said. You can move bridges around. So it is a brilliant game about navigating the board to be in the right areas at the right time, so you can build things, knowing and also just slightly pipping your opponents and controlling the different regions, because the bigger the regions, the more points you're going to get for controlling them. And it's, I suppose, on the face of it doesn't feel like an abstract game, but if you boil it down, it is completely abstract, because it's a game of perfect information. You know exactly what other players can do. There's no hidden cards or anything like that. It's just a completely open game that can be quite confrontational and quite nasty, because you can block players in for doing things and stuff like that. But I love it. This is a great game, Mexica. At number 31, which is obviously the final game for this list, is another Stefan Feld game. This is Luna. Now, Luna is a game that's quite hard to explain. I suppose it's has areas of area control, as you are trying to have the most of your followers on the board of the, I suppose it's the Moon Priestess, and you can get points that way. You are trying to send your worshippers off to the center of the board to control as many places as you can. But when you allocate them to these different spots on the board, every kind of value around that's lower than the one you've just allocated is kicked off. So there's this real kind of tension about, you know, when you're going to play your certain things and trying not to be kicked off. There are ways to protect yourself from doing so. There are ways to kind of manipulate the board to do the actions that you want to do. It really is a game that you need to check out yourself, because it's so, I suppose it's quite nebulous in a way, quite hard to wrap your head around at first, and one you have to experience. But it's just a testament to how great of a designer Stefan Feld is, because there really isn't anything out there like this. And I don't think it's going to be for everybody, but if you want something a bit different, something a bit out there, and something that's completely pulls you in different directions, because it can be quite an analysis paralysis prone game if you think about it too much, but at the same time you are limited in your options. And it's actually quite a quick game as well. It probably takes about an hour or just over an hour to play, but so much meat to this one, so much strategy, and you can really line up your moves to get a lot of bang for your buck if you play carefully. But I highly recommend this one. That is Luna. So that concludes this portion of my top 50 games of all time. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos too. I hope everyone else joins me for the rest of the list, so stay tuned for that. And I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.